Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Saqib Saeed, and I'm Head of Research and Product Development at PTR. And I'll be your host and moderator for this webinar on the state of EV charging infrastructure in the US. If we talk about the recent developments in EVCI industry in the US, there has been some highs and lows. If you look at the last quarter results from many different manufacturers, there has been relatively slowed down compared to the previous quarters. But it's actually the pace of the growth that has slowed down. For our calculus aficionados, it's the derivative is still positive of the growth. If we look at some other positives, I think standardization of charging standards is something that's really positive after a decade of back and forth. North American EVCI industry has standardized on one charging standards. I think that's a real positive for the industry. And some other aspects, such as the shortage of utility transformers, I think that has negatively impacted the EVCI market. So I'm sure that a lot of you have these topics on your mind. So that's what we're going to be discussing in this webinar today. So before that, I'd like to quickly introduce who we are as a company. PTR actually is we help our customers with information. There are three key laws, or you can say pillars, on which our company is structured. One is transparency, second is diligence and digestibility. We see our role as actually somebody who is trying to uncover the truth, because that's what we feel that our customers are making massive decisions based off the information that we're providing to our customers. So these three are actually extremely important to be able to provide the transparency that nothing is a black box. We're able to give our information with clarity. You can actually pinpoint that from where are we getting our information. Diligence, a lot of our team members have electrical engineering background, so we're able to understand these topics in depth. And digestibility, we make sure that the information that we're providing to our customers, they're able to utilize that information. This information can take different shapes and forms. So if you go to the next slide, this can be in the form of market research, market intelligence, or this can take the form of advice or recommendation to our customers based on that information. Expert network, that's something that helps us as well to collect information. So we have a vast network of experts from different industries. We connect with those experts to gather information for ourselves, but also we connect those experts to our customers as well. Marketing support, this is an area that we've recently introduced. We feel that with energy transition in power grid especially, which is a relatively slow moving industry, so any change in technology is something our industry is skeptical in the beginning. So to get the word out there, to make sure that the industry is educated in multiple topics. So we provide this marketing support as well, where we write white papers or do webinars on certain topics to make sure that the word gets out there. And lastly, we're using machine learning and AI actually to uncover the truth. Sometimes data can be incomplete, or it can be hidden in multiple layers. So we're using actually AI and machine learning tools to uncover that truth. So it can take different forms. It can be a data stream that we are providing to our customers, and they're taking that information to make their own decisions as well. If we move to the next slide, we'll see the topics that we cover. We starting from the legacy grid equipment on the left-hand side, transformers, switch gears, flexible AC transmission systems, and then more and more on the new energy, the impact of new energy onto the power grid. These are the topics that we're also covering extensively. Now, moving on to the topic, I'd like to introduce our speakers for today, Saim Talit and Zainab Ayub. First, Zainab will be talking about the global aspect of EV charging infrastructure market, just to have some comparison, and then we'll invite Saim for a deep dive into the US EV charging market, and especially the elephant in the room, that what's the impact of the recent slowdown in the pace of the growth, and how especially this impact of EVs is going to affect the EV charging infrastructure market. So with this, I'll hand it over to you, Zainab, for the overview of the global EVCI market. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Saqib. I hope I'm audible.
Yes.
Thank you. Can we please move on to the next slide, where I am going to be talking about the global overview, the electrification trends, and the EVCI market. But before I delve deeper into those details, I'd first like to shed some light on the importance of electrification in the transportation industry. So as we see in this slide, in this pie chart, that how of the 100% of the global greenhouse gas emissions, 23% is contributed by the transportation sector, and in this transportation sector, 41% is contributed by the passenger vehicles. Similarly, light commercial vehicles, buses and trucks contribute another 30% to this 23%, and this is something alarming, courtesy the fact that we are all well aware of the fact that how the global climate is changing. We can also see in this slide that how in 1990 the carbon emissions were 20.5 gigatons and how they've increased to 37 gigatons in 2022. So this is something alarming, and which is why electrification and transport industry is crucial not only for the planet, but for also for the generations in the future to come. Next slide, please. Thank you. So in this slide, we're going to be talking about the vehicle electrification trends, and we have categorized the vehicles into two segments. One is the commercial vehicles, and the second is the passenger vehicles. So first, I'll be talking about the commercial vehicles in which e-buses, e-trucks, and e-LCVs are included. According to the PTR data, the 2023 number for commercial vehicles is 538,000, and it is anticipated to increase to 2.4 millions by 2030 with an annual growth of 24%. In 2023, the highest percentage of commercial vehicles is that of the light commercial vehicles, and it remains the same in 2030 as well. However, we see that e-trucks are leading, e-buses are leading in 2023 with 22%. However, we see in 2030 that how e-trucks take the lead with 23% and e-buses go to 16%. If I talk about country-wise, the leader is China with a staggering 70% of global sales. Similarly, but by 2030, we know that Europe and Americas are going to catch up with almost 60% of the annual global sales. Now coming on to the next category of the vehicles, which is passenger vehicles. Currently, the number sits at 13.1 million in 2023, but it is expected to rise to 38.2 millions with a growth rate of 17%. And here as well, China is leading with almost 60% of the global sales. By 2030, as it is the case with the commercial vehicles, passenger vehicles as well, Europe and Americas will be catching up with almost 50%, whereas it is currently sitting at 36%. Next slide, please. Thank you. So in this slide, we're going to be talking about the electrification landscape, and it's an interesting slide. We have drawn a comparison between the statistics of 2018 and 2023. As we can see, the blue data points, they are representing the 2018 data, which represents that how nascent the market was back then. But we see that how the market has increased and how we see the share of electric vehicles has increased, particularly if we mention Norway and USA as main outliers. So if I talk about Norway, Norway is the leader in electrification already with 98% of its power generation coming from hydroelectric sources, and it's expected to have 100% of electric fleet by 2025. But if I talk about the USA, USA has a good electrification percentage, but not as big as compared to the number of annual sales. The reason of this may be the fact that it's a huge market, and obviously for a huge market to get to a big percentage of electrification, it takes time. However, USA is catching up, and Biden administration has set goals for reducing the greenhouse gas emissions to be 50 to 52% reduced by 2030. It is pertinent to mention also that we've excluded the Chinese market here in this slide because obviously it is the largest market, and USA comes the next. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this particular slide is it's an interesting slide because we're talking in the upper part of the slide, we're talking about the countries and their electrification targets. And the bottom part of the slide, we're talking about the manufacturers' targets of electrification, of fleet electrification, basically. So if I talk about Norway, as I already mentioned, that there is a 98% of its power generation is already because of the renewable hydroelectric sources, and the country boasts around a very high share of electric vehicles, with almost 20% of passenger vehicles already electric, and more than 80% of new vehicles which are sold are electric, according to the PTR's 2023 data. Similarly, if I talk about the UK, the UK set its ICE ban for 2030, but because of the protests and certain other circumstances, they pushed the ban to 2035. Now I go on to talk about France and Spain. They have a comparatively relaxed target of achieving electrification by 2040, but by 2040, it is 100%. That's also important to mention. Now I go on to talk about the OEMs, the original equipment manufacturers. So I would like to particularly talk about BYD, which is a Chinese manufacturer, which stopped producing the ICEs in 2022. And basically, then I go on to talk about Ford and GM, which would be electrifying 30% of their fleet to be electric by 2025. It is also crucial to notice here that how most of the countries have 2030 as something crucial. It's a crucial year, and most of the companies and the countries are setting it to be a turning point. So as we see that Volvo, Mitsubishi, Rolls-Royce, they'll all be going all electric. They'll be making their portfolio all electric by 2030. Also, as I talk about the manufacturers, the APEC manufacturers based in Asia Pacific, they're more inclined towards launching hybrid vehicles, courtesy the fact that there is a little reluctance in adoption of entirely electric vehicle infrastructure. Next slide, please. Thank you. So, okay, this slide is talking about the global EVCI market forecast, and it basically shows three cases that we use here at PTR, and I'll be focusing mainly on the base case, which is most likely to happen. Currently, we have, the market has a revenue of $11.8 billion in 2023, and it is expected to see a hike of $46.4 billion by 2030, with a growth rate of obviously 22%. This is most likely to happen. The EVCI market basically comprises of three segments: hardware market, software market, and services market. So hardware market is basically the infrastructure. Software market is the infrastructure, the software that drives the infrastructure, and obviously the services market, which is focused on maintenance and services. In 2030, it is expected that the hardware market would comprise 60% of the total market, followed by the services market sitting at 28%, and then the software market at 12%. If I particularly talk about the hardware market, so the hardware market has a revenue of about $8.1 billion currently, which is expected to be $28.1 billion by 2030. This market and these revenues are, driven by certain market drivers, namely rate of penetration of EVs, policies and incentives, and price changes in the forecast years. So if I talk about the rate of penetration of EVs, we do know that if the penetration of EVs is the rate of penetration of EVs is higher, the hardware market is obviously going to see a rise, a hike, and obviously the revenues are being calculated or anticipated and forecasted, keeping this in mind. Similarly, if I talk about the incentives and policies, so these also play a crucial role in growth of a certain market, particularly if I talk about the hardware market, because we did see it in 2020 when China retrieved a few of its incentives and policies, and they saw a decline in sales. Then I go on to talk about price changes, which is expected to decline in the forecast years, which is why the market is obviously going to grow and see a revenue of $28.1 billion. That is it from my side. Over to you, Saqib. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Zainab. Thank you for the global perspective of EV charging market. As I said, this gives us a kind of benchmark before we delve deeper into the North American EVCI market. Before I hand it over to you, Simon, I'd like to encourage all the attendees to ask any questions in the chat. The chat is open for you to write your messages. So if you have any questions so far on what Zainab presented or specifically on the US market, please go ahead and post your questions. We'll have towards the end 20 to 25 minutes to discuss those questions with both Zainab and Saim. So with that, I'll hand it over to you, Saim, to discuss the EVCI market in US as a deep dive. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Saqib, and thank you, Zaina, for providing deep insights on the global EV charging and EV market overview. So, as part of so I'll be presenting on two topics mainly: the US EV and charging infrastructure market. We will delve deep into the electrification market in US, the charging infrastructure market, and then the state-specific trends. And then we will move on to discussing some of the key policies and incentives in the US, as well as the emerging technology trends in the country. But however, before moving on to that, let's address the key issues or the elephant in the room on what's happening with the EV market in US or with the EV charging market, and what do we expect in the coming years. So uh, we all have come across these articles, news, opinion pieces, uh, even statistics. Entering into 2024, we saw a decrease in the growth of US EV charging EV market, electric vehicles market, and we've seen how this is partly coming into effect as part of Tesla's decline sales, and how other manufacturers, news pieces around other OEMs, how they are coming out publicly talking about how the sales growth targets are not meeting the expectations, and probably that the planning, and it's kind of says more about the planning and the corporate execution of the plans rather than the underlying growth of the category. Because even if, as of now, as we see the 2024 market, or what we expect of the market by the end of the year, we expect that the growth of the market will slow down, because we saw a huge increase in the 2023 market, but the growth is still positive. Even as we see for the first 3 months, we have seen these opinion pieces, articles where it states that the number of sales have declined for, let's say, for Tesla, for other vehicles. But when we see at the sales, we see that some of the other manufacturers have picked up the market that was available, and we saw that in March we recorded the highest number of electric vehicle sales in the US. So more than 11% sales were recorded. Talking about the effect of electric vehicles on the charging market, will it have an effect if in case we see a decrease, a slowdown in the growth of electric vehicles market? Of course, uh, the sales growth, the charger market, infrastructure market can slow down. However, it will stay more or less stable for the next couple of years. This is primarily due to a huge number of investments going on in the market, in this market, in the past couple of years. So since the Biden administration came on, we've seen as part of the plans of Build America, Buy America Act, we see a lot of new manufacturing companies, European companies entering, and Asian companies entering into the US market, setting up their manufacturing plants. And we haven't seen the actual realization of the manufacturing. Still, these are in the final stages. And once this is done, there would be a lot more easiness in the provision of charges. So confronting issues like supply chain issues, cost issues, and this will definitely counter the act if there is a slowdown in the growth of the EV market. So the charging market is still catching on. It's lagging behind the EV market at the moment in America. So that is something that we can expect to more or less stay stable. However, there are some challenges regarding the permitting procedures, the extended lead times that we see for setting up high power charging stations, and coupling these with the strained production capacities of EV charging manufacturers, it may impede the growth trajectory, but it still, as we will discuss the market in the coming slides, it still stays in the focus, in the uh, ballpark figures of what we expect of the market to be. One final piece on how the policies could impact the market. Uh, what we see that the in the US, the elections are coming up in the coming year, and we see that there could be a change of governments in the market. And if we see the change, we expect that the major plans, such as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, which included the funding, the NEVI funding, the Inflation Reduction Act, we see that most of the funding allotted for these programs would continue over the years. It may be more constrained as it is now as well. We have seen that a lot of commitments have been made as part of the NEVI funding, but the actual deployments have been quite low, and most of the deployments as of now are still happening on the private funding basis. So we as part even if there's a change of policies, and we still expect to see a moderate growth in the market. However, in case of there's a slight chance of reversal of policies as well when the governments change, and in that case we can still expect to see small changes. Why? Because we see in the case of electric vehicles and the charger market growth that the states mostly dictate how the markets are panning out. So as of now, if we see that 15 states currently contribute to 75% of the charging market, and most of these states have their own ZEV emission targets, have their own policies and initiatives, have their own incentives. So one of the latest development that if we see in the market is a reduction of the EV targets, electrification targets by 2030, which was initially proposed to 65% by 2032, but now it has been reduced to around 35%. However, we see that these states, which are also called the ZEV states, they're 15 plus states, and most of them have the highest market shares in the US. They contribute, they have their own targets set, and they starting these targets as part of the Advanced Clean Cars program. These targets starts at 36% manufacturing from 2026, and then it goes up to 100% electric manufacturing by 2035 within these states. So we see that there might be a slowdown in the growth of EV and EV charging infrastructure market, but in the long-term scenario, our forecasts presented are in line with what we expect of the market to be. So moving over to the next slide and discussing the actual trends in the market. So we see the vehicle electrification trend, and in the realm of electric vehicles, America really shines at the moment. So the country is making a big impact right now. If we see the Americas market, we see that the Americas regional market, which constitutes of all the countries, Canada, Mexico, North America, and South America, constitute of nearly 13% PEV sales in the region. And when it comes to the US, the US is leading the pack with around 80% share in the EV market. But it's not just about if we talk about the number of electric vehicles, and we see that there are passenger electric vehicles and commercial electric vehicles mentioned here. So it's not just about passenger vehicles. When we see the growth the growth is happening across the board in different vehicle categories. So take e-bus, for example, like they're projected to skyrocket with a annual growth of 50%, with a compound annual growth of 72%. And then there are light commercial vehicles, which are projected to grow at 41%, and trucks, electric trucks, which are expected to grow at a whopping 99%. And talking about the overall commercial vehicle market, the US is seriously gaining up for some serious expansion. And PTR predicts a nearly 50% CAGR growth from 2023 to 2030. So coming over to the passenger vehicle market, the United States has firmly secured its spot on the global electric vehicle stage. The country overtook Germany last year, becoming the second largest EV market in 2023 with 1.3 million EV sales 1.3 million EV sales in 2023. And thanks to strong support from major automotive manufacturers and the government initial ambitious plans of hitting 50% electric vehicle sales by 2030, we expect the market to hit a milestone of around 6 million electric vehicles by the end of the decade. However, it must be, I think it must be clear here that these sales are, although they take into account the ambitious targets of the government, the sales do not primarily target the 50% sales, and the growth track taken here is more around 35 to 40% electric vehicle sales by 2030. It's it's not just about the numbers at the end. There's a real shift in the mindset happening right now as well. So nearly 10% of all vehicle sales in 2023 were electric in the US, showing a growing interest in clean transportation options. And what we saw as one of the trends that the prices dropped a lot in the last 1 or 2 years, the electric vehicle prices. And this is primarily thanks to technological advancements and the increased competition between different EV manufacturers. So moving over to the EV charging infrastructure market, we see that in the US, between 2018 and 2023, the charging infrastructure market in the United States really took off, despite the challenges from by events like the COVID-19. And it's pretty remarkable, actually, that the market expanded by a whopping 32% during that time. Looking ahead, PTR data paints an optimistic picture for the US EV charging market. The data suggests continued growth with a growth rate of 34% from 2023 to 2030. And looking at the revenue, get this, that the revenue estimates are expected to soar from, if we look at the graph here below, they are expected to increase from 1.2 billion in 2023 to a staggering 8.6 billion dollars by 2030. And that's a massive jump, showing just how much economic potential there is in the EV charging market. And the fact that the USA dominates the Americas market with an 84% market share in the charging infrastructure market, that just goes how to show like how pivotal the country's role is in shaping the regional EV charging market. So talking about chargers now, the public and private charging market, it seems like the future is all about AC chargers and high power DC chargers. Of course, there's DC low power chargers in the mix. So is the high power DC chargers is anything that we here categorize as greater than 60 kilowatts, and DC low power chargers is anything that we categorize as less than 60 kilowatts in the segment. And AC and DC high power are expected to lead the public charging market, but but less than 60 kilowatt, although we see a slowed down growth, it's probably that the growth is slowed down, but still currently if we see the market was primarily occupied by low power DC chargers until a year ago. And so there are a lot of units already getting installed. And one of the products that we expect to maintain the sustained growth of this market is the emergence of new wall box chargers in the 0 to 30 kilowatt category and in this 50 kilowatt category that are much more suitable for destination chargers. Moving over to the private charging market, AC charging is still the king for residential and workplace light duty vehicle charging, but there is a real surge happening in DC charging for heavy duty vehicle fleet charging. And it's all about adapting to the charging needs of electric vehicle owners and ramping up fleet electrification efforts. So when it comes to actual revenue, the real money is in the residential and commercial vehicle charging segments. They're outpacing the destination and en route charging. So it's crucial to meet the needs of both residential and commercial EV owners to really cash in for the OEM manufacturers. Moving over to discussing some more on the charging infrastructure market in the US in some more detail. We saw that in 2023, the US private charger market revenue stood at an impressive $789 million. reflecting the increasing demand from charging solutions in residential and commercial settings. On the other hand, the public charger market revenue reached 439 million, highlighting uh, the increasing accessibility of charging infrastructure in public spaces. Uh, Public sector initiatives in the EV charging industry are gaining momentum, with significant allocations and regulatory mandates driving the growth. So the public charging market by 2030 is expected to reach $1.3 billion. However, this is relatively low compared to the private charging market, because as we previously claimed that the heavy duty vehicle fleet is one of the would be one of the key contributors to the revenue of the charging market. So there are some initiatives already, a lot of initiatives at federal level, a lot of initiatives at state levels that are promoting the growth of setting up the public charging infrastructure. Meanwhile, talking about the private sector is experiencing rapid growth as well, and it's fueled by the increasing demand for high power chargers, uh, particularly amidst commercial fleet electrification efforts. And what we have seen in the recent years is that the innovations like distributed architecture adoption for depot charging in trucks and buses exemplify private sector ingenuity and increases the chances of adaptability to this market. Uh, if we see here on the right, we have data on which locations the chargers are actually being installed right now. So this chart obviously includes the residential chargers, since in terms of units that occupies most of the market. So what we see here is that we are categorizing the deployment of chargers into three categories: destination, en route, and workplace. So destination application includes charging stations installed at destinations such as hotels, restaurants, shopping centers, and this is primarily the public charging for the day-to-day activities. En route charging, on the other hand, are strategically placed chargers along major roads and highways to provide charging opportunities for driving on longer journeys. And workplace charging is basically installing chargers at various businesses and office complexes. So as of 2023, what we see that approximately 22% of chargers were installed in destination locations, 3% are in en route locations, and 75% at workplace locations. So even if we see the split here constitutes of both AC and DC combined, and although we see that there are plans such as NEVI, which is one of the key driver of public high power charging deployment, and which will increase the growth of charging infrastructure along the highways and corridors in the US. What we see is that most of the states from the recent the proposal that they have presented would not be able to utilize the fundings for allotted for the states for the corridor only. So if we take the example of Texas, the amount of funding that was allotted to it as part of NEVI was around 400 million, but as part of the estimates regarding the deployment of infrastructure along the highways, what we see is that it will still have more than 300 million US dollars available at the end that it can spend on deploying chargers, not on the corridors, but on non-corridor roads and places. So this will definitely, a lot of these charges can come under the contribution under the application of destination as well. Moving over to the discussing the state trends, the state-specific trends in the US. What we see is an interesting trend that the top 15 states hold a significant portion, which is around 75% of all EV charging stations in the country. This concentration makes them crucial focal points for industry players and policymakers alike. And if we see that California leads the charge currently in the US market with 25% of the public charging infrastructure in the US installed within its borders. Additionally, what we also see is that the state boasts a substantial 32% market share of total EVs in the US. The California Energy Commission and utilities are actively funding the development of EV charging infrastructure in the state with a target of achieving 250,000 charging points by 2025. Almost this includes both public and shared private charging, and almost more than half of this has already been accomplished. On the other hand, we also see that other states such as New York is also making strides and have set targets for bolstering its support for electric mobility. It has been clear that states with set electrification targets, high number of EVSC incentives, and funding plans for deployment of charging infrastructure usually have a high number of installed charging infrastructure or even high EV to charger ratios in the states as well. Moreover, initiatives like the Advanced Clean Cars aim to, as we discussed at the start of my presentation, that state have their own plans for electrifying electric vehicles, and as this program Advanced Clean Cars 2 aim to push for the adoption of zero emission vehicles. The initiative targets achieving 100% zero emission vehicles in light duty vehicle sales by 2035, starting with 36% sales requirements in 2026 in specific states. And these states include New York, Massachusetts, Washington, Oregon, and more states as well. Furthermore, on the same topic, we also see that there are more than 15 states that have committed to achieving 30% electric bus and truck sales by 2030. And additionally, there are 13 states that have signed the MOU for ZEV states, pledging to adopt an increasing number of electric vehicles over the coming years. So it's not entirely dependent on how the federal market will shape, federal policies will shape, but it's also down up to the individual states, which primarily dictate how the EV and charging infrastructure market would turn out in those specific states. So, having discussed the trends and the market for the US, we can move over to the policies and incentives. There's some key categories of policy and incentives that are available in the US, and what kind of technology trends are there in the US market. So, what we see is that the US EVC market is experiencing significant growth with state-wise plans, policies, rebates, and incentives playing a crucial role in its development. One major driver for the public EVSE market, as we have discussed, is the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program funding under the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. The funding basically, it's landmark legislation, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, which allocates 7.5 billion to fund and build a comprehensive network of charging stations across the US. The funding encompasses programs such as both the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program and the establishment of charging infrastructure at various city locations. And this program consists of a 2.5 billion charging fueling infrastructure funding program, where underprivileged, underdeveloped communities, or where the AC charging infrastructure is not provided in the communities. These initiatives are essential for expanding access to charging infrastructure and encouraging the widespread adoption of electric vehicles in the country. What we also see is that many states have set their ZEVs targets to accelerate EV adoption, incentivizing the installation of network chargers for both private and public use. And additionally, numerous community programs are in place to deploy charging infrastructure in both disadvantaged and underdeveloped localities. What we also see is that utility companies are leading the way in the EVSC deployment. They play a pivotal role in accelerating the deployment of EV charging infrastructure. What we see is that they are investing significant sums of money, leveraging their resources and expertise to expand the charging networks. How they offer is that through various rebate programs and incentives, they encourage the installation of network chargers. So in turn, the consumer gets the charger at a reduced price, and the utilities and the state government want to get information on how the electricity trends, on how the grid would be impacted by the utilization of these chargers. So it's in benefit for both at the end of the day. There are other discounts such as residential and commercial rebates for residential rebates include rebates for residential charges provided by utilities, state governments, whereas the commercial rebates includes plans for or fundings for deploying charges in workplaces, in multi-dwelling units, for charging infrastructure to increase the adoption of EV drivers in locations, especially among the multi-dwelling units where the consumers do not have separate charging space and they lack a specific charger for charging their vehicles. Uh, Moving over to the last topic, discussing the emerging technology trends in the US market. So what we have seen that technological innovations have been an integral part of the charging market. The paths over the last few years, we see the path from low-powered, simple cable chargers to ultra-fast chargers, incorporating advanced communication protocols. New technologies has evolved over the last couple of years. And the renewed interest in producing mass market and affordable electric vehicles has come along with the need to deployment for charging infrastructure that suits for different vehicle types, different locations, different applications, and so we come up with these new technology trends that help us in different scenarios. So talking about the V2G market, uh, the vehicle to grid chargers or the vehicle to home chargers in general, what we saw as part of the vehicle to grid, like, or which we say smart charging or V1G initially, that V1G or smart charging makes it possible is like more on the demand side management of the chargers, where it's possible to control the charging time and magnitude of the charging power from the power source to the AV. But vehicle to grid or V2G goes a step forward in this regard. It allows for energy stored in the batteries to be fed back into the grid. And with the V2D technology, it is possible to control the charging time, magnitude, as well as the direction flow of the power. The technology, what it does, it allows users and utilities to not only time shift the charging of the cars, but also allows them to pull energy from a car battery when energy systems are more strained. And it can help in various applications such as balancing energy variations in production and consumption over the time. And what we see here is that the DC chargers, we mainly see the deployment or um charging manufacturers. More than 20 charging manufacturers have come up with their or are developing their products in the DC V2G hemisphere, but we have seen a renewed interest in AC V2G chargers as well. The difference is simple that in the layman terms, it's simple that only the inverter needs either to be at the charger side or in the vehicle. So in either case, it's a win-win scenario for the grid, for the consumer. It's just a matter of like what application do we have to consider these for. Talking about the battery buffer charging, um, it integrates EV charging stations with energy storage systems, typically in the form of large scale batteries. Incorporating battery buffer EV charging into electrical systems, it has several benefits. What we can see, like it can help in reducing infrastructure upgrade requirements. So it can buffer. It can help with the grid stability. It can help with low cost. It can help reduce the charging costs and also enhance the resilience of the grid. It's especially it finds its applications at locations where there's in highly populated urban areas where we see a low availability of capacity for a charging location. So we can deploy these battery stations, and especially off the grid locations in remote areas where we do not have grid or where we do not have enough capacity for the grid, and we need high power charging infrastructures such as in the future we'll need these high power chargers, megawatt chargers for electric trucks. So these systems would be of great importance. Uh, the wireless charging, it can be a real changer in the e-mobility sector since it does not require an interface or any supplementary equipment like cables or EV charging. The only thing required is the EV charger development, which involves installing induction pads beneath parking stations, homes, offices, or such places. But it is still in a budding phase. However, in the long run, we expect that the EV charging industry will certainly be on an outlook for new innovative approaches to counter challenges which arise as a result of high utilization of charges across the globe for challenges that arise as a result of different scenarios in different applications. We There have been interest from manufacturers and charger manufacturers as well as automotive OEMs in testing and deploying this technology. What we saw a recent development that the Tesla Cybertruck, which is just seeing its new market in the US, there have been identifications that it includes the technology to charge wirelessly. However, it has not been publicly claimed by the company, but the technology is incorporated in the vehicle. And finally, coming over to the megawatt charging system, which is crucial for high power charging of fleet vehicles, especially for trucks, for long haul trucks, that we expect the market to be a significant part of the US market and globally as well for long haul trucking. So we expect to see these high power chargers popping up. There are a number of coalitions already happening in the market. A number of pilot projects are being set up. We've seen chargers being in the test phase. The standardization is happening of the standard of the megawatt charging system. So we can expect uh, commercial deployment of these high power chargers, uh, 750 kilowatt, 1 megawatt and higher by the start of next year. And by that, I end my presentation here, and I will hand it over to Sakim. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Saim. Thank you for all the insights and details on the US market. I will request all the attendees if you have any questions, any comments on what Saim presented or Zainab's presentation on the global EVCI market, please go ahead. You can post your questions in the chat. I can already see three questions in the chat. Before that, Saim, I had a quick question on the revenue slide from you. When we say revenue, does that include just the hardware of EVCI, or does that include ancillary services as well? The number that you gave on the outlook of 8.6 billion US dollars for the US EVCI market, what does that constitute?
So it constitutes only the hardware, the charger itself. It does not include any make-ready infrastructure as part of it. What it also does not include is the software and the services market, which is associated with the EV charging infrastructure market. So software related revenues or the services where the maintenance of chargers or replacement of chargers, that is a market that we are not considering. This market just considers the deployment of charging hardware market.
Got it. Understand. Okay, then we can start going through the questions very quickly. I'll start with the first question. How do you view the expansion of the distributed architecture in EV charging space? Um,
Uh, I can go on to answer
Go
this
ahead,
question.
please.
So, in my opinion, distributed architecture with separate components allows greater flexibility and scalability, and which is why by decoupling the power unit from the power dispensers, the operators can easily scale their charging infrastructure to meet the growing demand by adding more, dispensers without requiring additional power units. And this modularity also simplifies the maintenance and upgrades, as individual components can be serviced and replaced independently, minimizing the downtime. Other than that, I think distributed architecture also enables, better optimization of resources and space utilization. Charging stations can be strategically placed in locations where they are most needed, maximizing the accessibility for users and minimizing congestion. So
Right.
that's what I think.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Tesla's entire network is all distributed architecture. Is my understanding correct?
I think Saim can probably shed some
Mhm.
light on this. Saim, can you
Yeah,
please? the
Yeah,
light
yeah.
years?
So Tesla's like the DC charge
Mhm.
infrastructure is primarily distributed. So it has
Hmm.
power cabinets in the back and the dispensers in the front. And what we are seeing is that more and more
V3
manufacturers are.
superchargers, I guess.
Yes, yes. And
Yeah.
what we're seeing is that more and more deployment from different manufacturers, like there are new solutions being presented from Kempower, uh, from Alpitronic, from Tritium, of modular and distributed architecture systems. So this reduces, what this does is that this reduces the need for spaces in locations, in especially in congested locations, and we can have the power, all the power required in the back end. This also increases the utilization of the chargers.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Then the next question is, what accounts for the significant growth disparity between the US private charger market and the public charger market projected for 2030, as you've presented? I think this question is directed towards you, Simon.
Uh, sure. I think it's it's the US private the private charger market in general, and in general for globally as well as for specifically for the US market. What we see is that the growth is very high because of uh, the fleet electrification that we discussed. So what we saw was that the public charging market is expected to be, right now it's around 400 million. The private charging market is around 700 million, and most of that, the private charging market is still arising from the residential segment. So a huge part of it is residential, but also like we have seen significant deployments in the commercial segment as well. But right now, the commercial market, the EV market, the fleet market is at very initial stage. Although we are already seeing the deployments in commercial phases, it is not in the pilot phase anymore. But what we see is that for the US market, we are seeing a huge growth in the adoption of, with the target set for electrification of electric buses, and especially for electric buses by the government. And there's a huge fleet of electric trucks that need to be electrified in the US, millions of trucks. And once those get electrified, they are all the trucks require DC charging for it. So and in most cases it's either a one-on-one ratio, or a few charges less. Even if we go into the distributed architecture system, a few charges less for like 100 charges we need for 100 vehicles, trucks will need 80 charges, 70 charges for overnight charging. And considering in the en route deployment of these charges, we can still expect to see like huge deployments. So that is where primarily the difference is coming from, because the public charging market, at the end of the day, as part of the NEVI plan, I also suggested that the funding was allotted for deployment of high power chargers in the on corridor locations. But at the end, the locations are covered, because even if we install at 50 every 50 kilometers, demographically there's a limitation on how close we can install these chargers in the public spaces. So at the end, this will saturate the market. But on the private side, the fleet will keep growing, and the fleet is there, and we have to electrify those. So the market difference will be huge in the future.
Understood. Thank you so much, Simon. I think both of the next questions are
Yeah.
around the charging standard. It's actually that we commented on earlier as well. So
Hmm.
the question is basically the trend between CCS and NACS. How do we see the market share? If I recall correctly, I think even in the upcoming EV charging stations, even though NACS is the North American standard, there is still provision of CCS ports even in the upcoming standards. I could be wrong. Correct me if I am, Simon. So yeah,
Hmm.
what comments do you have on the potential share between NACS and CCS moving forward?
Yeah, I think CCS, yeah, of course, the NACS is being incorporated. And one of the primary reasons that why it was being incorporated by many OEMs is to access a huge two key points. One, as highlighted by Roger, that it's flawless. The next connectors, the Tesla charging network has been flawless compared to the CCS network, and the reliability is a key issue in the US market. We have seen reports. Recently, what we saw, there was a funding release for maintenance of chargers, because there are a lot of chargers are either they are out of service, they are damaged. So there was funding released of 150 million US dollars to just fix these chargers, which are not working anymore. And these issues with not charging when you plug in, the power is not there. So these happen with CCS, and uh, the reliability is one issue. On the other hand, what the OEM saw was comfort for their consumers, for their clients. So giving them an opportunity, just incorporating a one connector will give them an opportunity to have double the amount of network to access to. And this significantly helps them to increase their EV sales, as they will, they can stop customers from going to Tesla specifically because of the charging needs. And so it's more of a corporate play as well. But what we see in the future, what I can say is that there would still be CCS would still be there in the connectors. We cannot completely diminish it out of the equation. The connectors, we are expecting that Charimo connectors, which are unfortunately still being installed at some chargers. When they get installed, we need that it should be standardized to just the CCS and the Tesla Next connector. But it could be that in some time, since when we see these charging network operators such as Electrify America, we see Rivian network, we Ionity networks in the Europe. There's EVgo network. So all of these are uh, coordinating with EV manufacturers. So EVgo is coordinating with GM, Electrify is part of the Volkswagen. So Ford is also incorporating with one of the key manufacturers such as Siemens. So what we see is that they're also working with these manufacturers, and it might be the case that at some point there could be a reverse back to just the CCS standard, if in not anytime soon, but in 3-4 years down, there could be a reverse of policy, and the CCS could again be the main standard. Uh, but again, what we see from now is that the NACS and CCS will have an equal share in the market, and it can go on as such.
Mhm. Okay. And again, if I recall correctly, the reliability is an important factor. I think the comparison that you shared is definitely there. Um, in terms of performance, do you see CCS getting any better? As the next question from Roger, is that is there a possibility moving forward? Is there work going on with regards to CCS? Maybe I can add my question next to it, is that the advancements on megawatt charging, is that connected with CCS as well, or with the NACS?
Uh, so yeah, starting with your second question, yeah. So the megawatt charging standard in is it's a new standard, but it's built on the standards from the CCS by the Charin. Uh, However, like it's not part of the next connectors, because the Tesla has its own megawatt charging standard, which it uses for Tesla Semi, and it's difficult to say at the point that will we see a coordination or a unification of the standard in that fleet market as well, because that's important. What should be learned at this point is it should be learned already that we need to standardize at this point where the market is still developing, and not push it at time when we have a difference in opinion. So uh, of course, like as I've said, like there was a funding release for the mm, replacement of these charges, for the maintenance of these charges. And what we have also seen as part of, especially as part of, if we see these fundings being announced for deployment of charges, and a lot of manufacturers are coming in actually to take advantage of these fundings that are there available. And as part of these fundings, there are set criterias There are set criteria for the power of chargers, the standardizations for connectors for chargers, where how they are to be built. So we are seeing and with the analytics as well, which are now recommended to be provided to states and the government, we see that there would be an improvement in the quality of these connectors and the chargers. Uh, but it will take some time to catch on
Hmm.
because we do not have a consolidated market. It's a number of manufacturers, a number of connector providers, a number of different equipment providers that have to consolidate and work together. So at the end, it could be an issue ranging from anything from a hardware issue to a software issue to a simple glitch in the infrastructure to a issue caused by the customer. So it's a very vast variety of options there. So we can expect it to improve, but it still will take time to catch on to Tesla at the moment.
Okay, I'm trying to connect the dots with something that I read the other day. That Tesla has been the one that has been winning the most number of any NEVI funding. Um, is this because of the reliability? Because you mentioned there is set requirements, you have to have certain standards. Is this because of the reliability? I'm just trying to connect the dots with what you said.
So the NEVI funding allotments, its reliability could be one of, since it's not publicly available, like why they are being allotted. It's
Hmm.
more one of the key things that was that I could analyze why Tesla is getting a lot of these chargers after having the next connector available is the cost of these locations. So a Tesla charger, a DC charger, on average costs around 20 to 25,000, range of 20 25,000 US dollars for this 150 kilowatt to 250 kilowatt V3 chargers,
Hmm.
or in the range of, okay, let's say 30,000 US dollars. While the same chargers from other manufacturers reach out to 100,000, 120, or even higher in some cases for the same power category. So the funding demanded by the Tesla chargers is much lower for a more
Mm,
number of chargers. And since the next connector is available to now to other manufacturers,
mm,
the states now prioritize having more charges for less amount of funding.
I see.
And what interesting thing I recently saw was that Tesla is now also selling DC chargers, not just deploying chargers. In the UK, it sold there's a network operator and it installed chargers from Tesla, the new V4 chargers.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Saim. Thank you, Zainab. And thank you to all the attendees. We're already beyond our allocated time. We will make sure that you will get the recording of this webinar as well as the presentation will be made available as well. And yeah, beyond this, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. We'll be happy to answer. That's all from
I
my
think,
side. Yeah, go ahead,
uh,
Saim.
sorry, I think there's just one more question from, I think we can
Oh,
briefly, yeah,
I did not see that. Yes. Okay. Uh,
yeah, we can briefly address it.
Go ahead. Yeah, the question is again on the standards. Will CCS move to
Yeah, yeah,
simpler next design? Go ahead.
yeah. So like briefly, the work on plug and charge is going on in on all applications. So no screen, no app we not expect, because screen is an important part of the interaction, the user interface as well. So we still expect that the screen has its advantages, because not everyone as of now is very oriented towards like electronics. Not everyone knows how to use the apps. So screen provides useful
Mm.
uh, no, information on the, but we are expecting to see moving towards no app on, or just credit card, or no credit card, and just moving towards the plug and charge.
Again,
And work is
okay.
being done, and we will eventually move towards that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Once again, thank you, Simon. Thank you, Zainab, and thank you to all the attendees. Yeah, again, if you have any questions beyond that, please reach out to us. We'll make sure that we'll get back to you. That's all from my side as well. Thank you so much, and have a nice rest of the day. Thank you. Bye now.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you,
Goodbye.
everyone. Bye. Goodbye.